Hi, it's Jonathan. Another incredible lesson today. I was walking out in the woods again, in a state of contemplation. All the things kind of whirling around in my mind. The ego trying to follow its own illusion, I was walking and I was thinking about, well, what is this then? How do you overcome all of the challenges here? And then it infused into me what is occurring with me metaphorically. It said, your personality as it is right now can't really help anybody. It thinks it can, but it can't. You see, whenever I have been in a state of dialogue or interaction, spontaneous interaction that has affected people, it said, from its point of view, that was me. When your ego was overcome and I was speaking through it, that's when you become very piercing with truth, because you're kind of along for the ride, as is your design. Well, look how much you enjoy when the Spirit speaks through you, Jonathan, that type of thing. That's because you're designed specifically to enjoy love, to enjoy being guided by the Creator of everything. That's your design. That's why nothing gives you more pleasure than when something like that happens. For example, I recently took a trip through the Bible Belt, and I'll describe what happened on that trip later. But I found myself down in Florida. I was guided to go into a strip club. And you're thinking, yeah, I'm sure you were guided, Jonathan, but it's not what you think. I like to be around those people. For some reason, they're the ones that I know are being held down. And that doesn't mean that I go in there with my personality and say, oh, you're more held down than I am. I'm better than you. No, it's quite the opposite. I went in and immediately went way in the back corner. Some of the girls came up and wanted me to tip them, and I made them understand that's not what I want to do. And they would sit down and talk to me, and we talked a lot about spirit, a lot about what's going on in the country and all kinds of things. And I was sitting there, and then it happened. You see why you're led to do things. And in comes this girl who apparently had stripped there before. And they wouldn't let her strip that night for whatever reason. There was some conflict, and so they wouldn't let her ask for tips. They wouldn't let her strip or dance or anything. So she sat down next to me, and we started talking. She was pretty and all that. Jonathan's ego would take notice of that. And so the law of attraction, the magnetic coupling of energies of the minds, the egos, took place. Her base chakra became active, her root chakra, her sex energy. And I could feel it. She started to bat her eyes at me and tell me how she's married, but occasionally her husband lets her play, that type of thing. The whole temptation. Of course, there was an entity attached to her. And I started to feel it strongly, and then I had to tell her, I said, I feel your base chakra, your root chakra. I can feel the energy. I said, I'm going to turn that off, okay? And she looked at me. She said, no, you're not. I said, give me your hands. So I held her hands. And then what I tried to do was focus my energy, like an energy worker would do, to turn off her base chakra. And I sat there for 30 seconds, focusing really hard with the mind to try to manipulate her energy and bring it into, quote, balance. Then I let go after 30 seconds with this confident look on my face. I said, how do you feel now? She said, the same, and laughed. She She said, I'm still horny. I'm like, oh yeah. The same thing that happened with that scenario with the girl who had cancer, right? And then the information started coming in my head via the spirit. She was molested. I said, were you molested as a child? Right out of the blue. Her expression changed. She said, yeah. Your father, right? Yeah. Your husband lets you play, huh? And lets you strip? Give me your hands again. And this time, I wasn't trying to manipulate energy. I loved her. Inside, I loved what was in her. It wasn't her fault. The whole thing isn't her fault. The fact that she's a stripper there, under the control of entities, magnetically coupled to an abusive husband, a using husband, it's not her fault. And I loved the spirit in her. Suddenly, she let go of my hands, gasped, and said, oh my God, that worked. She got off her stool, walked about 5 feet, collapsed, fell against the wall. She had to sit there for a moment. What happened? She was possessed by an entity. And I started loving her spirit to the point, like jump-starting a car, that it started to rise inside of her and challenge the entity's control, which created that visceral, that somatic symptom of dizziness and illness, a really challenging feeling inside of her own mind. She came back to the stool and had a different point of view. And then I explained to her. And she was under the command of love at that point, as was I. It wasn't Jonathan's mind explaining life to her, because Jonathan's mind doesn't know anything. Jonathan's mind experiences these things. And at the end of that, I just said, you're loved. And I know the spirit will take it from there. Because I loved her. And love sustains. And I will continue to do so. I don't have to be in her presence. See, people think prayer, they've been manipulated by this pagan religion system. To think that prayer means you have to sit there and mouth words in your head, to think of linear language in your mind. That's not what prayer is. Prayer? God already knows what you need. The Spirit already knows what you need. It isn't about you having to define it for the Spirit. It already knows. So there's only one thing you can do. Love the creative spirit. I was taught that today in the woods with, it explained what's happening to me. You know the concept that mind control agents use? They talk about creating altars in your mind. It said that's kind of what's happening to me. The Spirit has created an altar of Jonathan that is untouchable. And when it flips forward, it has the command of the Spirit. But it's not an altar like mind control in that it's separate from other parts of me, that when it comes forward and goes back that I forget all about it. No, this one is wired into every altar of Jonathan, every part of Jonathan. And the way it put it in my mind was like, because, see, Jonathan, you're thinking of it incorrectly. You hear the words of Christ where he said, soon you will all be as me. Well, what makes you think that is just people? If there are many yous, many versions of your personality, like everybody, inside your own head, then if you are now penetrated by spirit, then all of your individual altars, and say soon they will all be as me. Scalar reality. This is not a mind control altar. This is a version that is a seed of healing. Because when this one comes to the front, it loves all the other parts of you and shines the love on them. So think of it like a conglomeration. The more that happens, the more the other altars will join this altar and come into it. Conglomeration, condensation, healing from the inside out, absorbing all the illusory Jonathans into the real Jonathan so that it is then one inside. That is the plan. If you want to think of it in terms of light, which it isn't, and I'll explain that, but let's use that for a metaphor. Why would light conquer darkness? Because darkness is only the void of light. So, darkness has no substance. It only exists as a shadow. Think of it like a sun umbrella. The shade. Light can shine on the void, but the void cannot overcome light, because the void is the result of the absence of what is real. It said, the way they've wired everybody's brains, they've created all these sun umbrellas in your mind, blocking the light. But it's not light, it's love. Light, it said, to be specific so you are clear. Light is structure. If you view it as light in your mind, you are then confined to structure. It is not the sun, S-U-N, that's photon light. This is not what it is. Think of it as love, which gives rise to substance. And when they manipulate your mind and create guilt and doubt and shame and fear, those are like umbrellas to the love of spirit. And then you reside in the shadow underneath your blockage to the love. That's where these entities reside. Because they're fearful of love, they create these things in your mind and hang on to those. So whatever you hate in yourself, that's under that umbrella, the veil, where the light is not shining. And it said, this is just another way of explaining the same thing I explained to you with the keys to God thing that I talked about in The Healing Begins Now. Going back and loving parts of you that you've been in fear of, or things that you hate about yourself or that are guilty or shameful, because those are all in the darkness. Those are all in the shadow. So you have to get to a point where you cast no shadow. Not a light shadow, a love shadow. And it was very interesting. It said, actually, you find yourself now dialoguing in your own mind with this, what you call an altar, but it's not really an altar. And if you pay attention, you're always giving yourself advice, because that part of your mind is open to me. And this is why you find yourself giving yourself advice in your own mind. Scalar reality. So that was put in my mind, and then I was shown without words. Incredible, the Spirit. So I'm walking down the trail, and then there they are, a few deer in the field. I'm used to deer accepting my presence and everything. Now this time it was a little different. It's quite overwhelming, actually. I went, and then I saw these deer. And so what I did is I sat down. I just sat down cross-legged on the path and was being with them. And my will was on them. But this time, from out of nowhere it seemed, all of these deer, like 10 deer, some big deer, come out of nowhere and all just come right up to me. And they were kind of antsy, stomping their feet and challenging me, looking right at me. And I was kind of outnumbered, okay? I mean, and I sat there, and in that moment I tried to love them. And then the Spirit spoke to me. Jonathan, you're trying to love them. That's not love. What are you going to do in this situation? Remember your lesson. Focus on me. Don't focus on them. Focus on me. So I shut my eyes and bowed my head down and trusted God. And I just focused on the love of the Spirit. And then it put in my head, don't think of how they perceive you. Know thyself. What are you? Focus on me. Look here. Think here. Love here. Beeline for me. As I am everything. Look, Jonathan, what are you? I'm love. Whatever happens, happens. You gotta let go of that. They could charge you right now. Don't you move. You love me. If you die right now, then you die right now. You stay focused on me. And I started loving the Spirit. As me, as the real me, as how I was when I was a child. Just not trying to love, not trying to overcome the deer with love, like some sort of superior being to them. Just the innocent love. And I trusted it. I shut my eyes. And then I opened them. And then they all let me know that they accept my presence now. I humbled myself before them by loving the Spirit. And then I acknowledged them. And they understood what I was going through. And then I hung out with these deer for a while. They kind of spread apart on either side of me on the trail that I was on. And the male deer being mindful and then kind of moving away and trusting me around its babies, you know. And they're there and they're acknowledging me and I'm real close, you know. And I stood up and I let them know I'm going to stand up now. And I waited for them to pick up on that imagery and then I stood up. And then my ego took over again, and then it stopped me. You're trying to love them, Jonathan. Look at you. You're trying to love them. You're trying to affect the outcome based upon what the ego is hoping for, which is an illusion. It's going backwards. Focus on me. Remove the umbrella. And every time I did that, all the deer, their heads pop up, look at me, and nod. Every time. Every time I moved into the love of Spirit. And there I was. And then this old man, who to humans would have seemed harmless, came walking down the trail right past me. And all the deer just spread away. They just ran from him. And there's this one deer, and I hear him out loud, "It's okay, it's okay." And the deer just took off because of the duplicity he was broadcasting, no matter what his intentions were. And he walked past, and then they all came up to me again. They ran from him, and then all came up to me, just hurried right back into my presence. And they knew of the fear, and I let that out there. I let them know I'm kind of scared. You're all, you're outnumbering me, and they let me know. We know that. And I humbled myself. Before them, I recognized their might and their beauty, and then it beelined. Look at that deer right there, Jonathan. You are no better and no worse. You are 100% equal. And then it looked at me. Love it. No, no, no. Look, you're trying to love it, you see? Stop that. Love it. No, no, no. Wait, stop the mind. What are you? Look at me. Look at me again. Remove the umbrella. What are you? Now you see, there you go. You're love. Now look at the deer. There, you see. Incredible. No, this isn't schizophrenia. I mean, if you saw the deer's reaction, you'd be quite very certain. Okay? It's incredible. And then I just let them know, thank you. And they walked right up with me, nodded, and I bowed my head, shut my eyes. I let them know of the true respect. My ego didn't let them know. I just kept focusing on the love of spirit so that it could shine through me. And then I knew to respect them. They don't need to look at me. They don't need to come up and let me pet them. They are equal. Therefore, whatever they want to do is their right. It's amazing. It's that you got to remove the blinders, the umbrellas to the love. So there's a part in you that is pure, as in everybody, and that's swelling now. It's absorbing the parts that are not real into itself. You're healing from the inside out. Soon you will become as me, says a part of Jonathan's mind to all the other parts of Jonathan's mind. And then in the next scale up. The ego gets in the way. It's, if you think in terms of Christ, the very fact that they came to him and called him king was actually a ploy. You see, they knew that he was coming because of their ability to see throughout various parts of time. They knew who he was, as they always do, when he incarnated. So that was a ploy to the ego. Here are gifts for you. You are a king. Why? To cripple him, to disable him, by making him see himself as superior. All these stories of master and all of that, it's bull. See, when Christ said they will use my teachings to promote paganism, this is exactly what he was talking about. The story you're told about Christ just mirrors the story of Nimrod and Isis and Tammuz. That's not the truth. That was their attempt to manipulate him, and he overcame that because of the Spirit. Are you the King of Jews? You say I am. That's the most potent line that proves his connection to Spirit to me in the whole Bible. Are you the King? You say I am. In other words, that's your sickness. This is why he would wash the feet of, quote, his disciples. He knew. This whole idea of anointing him and calling him the Christ was not his idea, as he came down to prove the equality, the love. That was their paganism. That was their attack on his mind. You all think that evil comes to you, I guess, with some sort of sign that says, hello, we're evil. No, evil is on either side of the truth. It will entice you. It will build up your ego, fluff it up, or try to hurt you. There are many ways to do it. They tried to make him feel superior, catered to his ego, and he overcame that. That's what I get from it, and that's the guidance I get from the Spirit. It said, look, every time your ego gets in the way, what happens? What happens? Don't look at Christ as your master. These stories, they say that demons call him master. They would never call him that. But yet he could remove them. Why? Because he removed the shadows in those people. There was nothing left for the demon to hang on to, and they knew it. they hid from the love in the dark.